You can save a life by just taking a moment with a human trafficking victim and connecting with them, building rapport, using trauma-informed care and victim-centered care.
Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. Welcome to the Triple P Podcast. This is episode number 30, where we are with Mark, Brende, and Matt Driscoll, two individuals that I was actually able to meet, had the pleasure of meeting at the IFC conference. And during that time, I attended their class, and it was all about human trafficking. I was super intrigued at the time when I seen this topic, because as a first responder, we know that we're out there on a regular basis. We know that we may have potentially came across some of these types of individuals, but we're never able to actually identify because we've never been given the proper training. IEmpathize is a course that they offer free online. And so when I was like, man, wow, that's pretty awesome that you can get some sort of training like this free online. But anyways, I got to know Matt and Mark a little bit more while I was at that conference, and invited them on the Triple P to be able to share what they are so passionate about coming forward. So I'm going to read their bios here, then we're going to get into it. Mark and Matt, I'm super excited about this one because I do think it's got a huge impact for a lot of first responders, and I really do think that you guys have a great mission. So I'm going to start with Mark. Mark Brende is an advocate of and a member of IEmpathize, which is an organization at the forefront of preventing child exploitation and human trafficking. Through powerful speaking and multimedia engagements, Mark's collaboration with a diverse audiences nationwide. He fosters awareness, empowering individuals and communities to take action against these crimes. His expertise is sought after by universities, faith communities, social workers, first responders, and healthcare professionals. He helps to equip them to recognize and to respond to this, to combat this exploitation and of these victims. Mark's efforts over the past 14 years inspire change and a collective commitment to eradicate child exploitation and human trafficking. Matthew Driscoll. He's a distinguished veteran, public servant, and a humanitarian with a remarkable career spanning 16 years in the fire service. After serving in the United States Navy, Matthew joined the Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, where he spent 14 years as a dedicated firefighter. And he was a skilled paramedic in providing crucial frontline health care on the streets in Las Vegas. He does have an associate's degree in fire science, and he has a relentless commitment to the community that he serves. Matt's adaptability and quick thinking propelled him to the position of engineer. This is where he ensures efficient operations and the safety of his team and the communities they serve. In 2018, Matthew expanded his impact beyond firefighting by partnering with IEmpathize, an organization focused on combating human trafficking and child exploitation. Together, they launched a groundbreaking training program in Las Vegas area, equipping Matt provided this training to over 1,000 participants with these essential skills. For the past 5 years, Matthew has continued this transformative work, training fire department personnel and others in life-saving techniques to identify and combat human trafficking. His exceptional contributions were recognized in 2019, where he was honored as the City of Las Vegas Employee of the Year. Highlighting his unwavering dedication to protecting the vulnerable communities he serves as a great role model. Matt and Mark, wow, I know I struggled at bits to be able to get through all that, but I hope I didn't butcher it too much. I really wanted to make sure that I emphasized a lot of good parts because I am super proud to be able to sit here and talk to you guys today. So what did I miss? What can you add to it? And let's get it started.
Thanks, Chief O'Brien. It's a privilege to be here, and those were longer bios than I imagined.
Well, when you're
But
typing them, you're like, oh, well, I think this is good. And then I'm like, I'm reading it. I'm like, whoa, I practiced 3 times before this podcast. I'm like, oh, well, hey, here we go.
I thought,
yeah.
man, that is a long bio, Mark.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Well, hey, you know what? What's cool about it, and because that bio was so long, I actually forgot what I even talked about initially. But I want to tell the audience real quick that we have Matt and Mark on a Microsoft Teams. I'm looking at a PowerPoint of the class that they do. So the what we're trying to do in this podcast is capture the class that I sat through at the conference, so we can bring it to you while you're driving in your vehicle to be able to start listening and be able to start getting some of these techniques to combat against this human trafficking. But one of the things I want Mark to talk about a little bit is I know I said the bios that were long, but seriously, like, how'd you get started in IEmpathize, and how did this vision come to light, and how did you and Matt connect? Let's talk to the audience a little bit about that, and then how you can provide a free training online.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a long story, so I'll try to make it short. But I've been involved with IEmpathize for just over 14 years. I was already in the nonprofit sector, working on college campuses, actually in a ministry context, and we, at the time, were looking to do some human trafficking work internationally, and just felt like it was a better fit for me to be involved in an organization that was to go after this in a profitable way in terms of outcome. And so I Empathize was a great partnership, initially with the college initiative, and we've over the years evolved from working internationally in Southeast Asia, Russia, Mexico, to having partnerships and sectors here in the United States where we're really equipping those that cross paths with this issue to be able to recognize and respond. And also we equip youth with strategies to be safe through our curriculum that we provide through educators in a classroom setting.
Yeah, I did notice that on the website. They had when you go to the website, it had you create an account for free and a login, and it shows like youth programs and adult programs.
Correct. Yeah. And those adult programs expand into hospitality, into healthcare. We have law enforcement training, multifamily. We've partnered with the Wynn Casino with the casino training. So the youth training is really, really important because we want to stop this before it even starts. But I'll let Matt chime in on, how we met and partnered up on this first responder training.
Yeah, actually, we were at a men's retreat in Colorado, this beautiful place up in the mountains, and they were offering a poker night. Well, I'm from Vegas. I like poker. So I went and played poker. And Mark got up and spoke at one of the intermissions and talked about I Empathize. And well, to make a long story short, I spent time in Thailand when I was in the military, and I saw some of the atrocities that were happening there. And that stuck with me for 14 years. 14 years later, I run into Mark and I ask him if they're in Las Vegas. He said no, and my short answer to him was, you will be. Go home 2 weeks later, mess up my knee. I'm sitting at a computer and the chief comes by and he says, hey, I need you to work for Doc doing this stuff. And that sounded terrible to me. So I asked him if I could build a training, and he asked me what the training was on. I said, child exploitation, human trafficking. He stopped dead in his tracks, looked at me, and he said, I've been on this job for 23 years, and I've never heard anybody say anything like that, so go for it. So fast forward a couple weeks, I'm sitting in my kitchen, and I've got one of my really good buddies over. We're breaking some bread, having a drink, and I tell him about the training. He's a very, very successful entrepreneur, and after I told him about the training, he said, how much will that cost? I said, right now we're at about $10,000. And so he said, okay. I was like, what do you mean, okay? He goes, I got your first 10,000. So that was really the spark that got the fire going. Then I went around town, found, the best places that we could to have the training. It was on the World Market Center. And then on Sunday, it completed with a movie that we showed at the Smith Center, which is our performing arts center that was like brand new at the time. So that's basically how it happened. Mark came out. we had a human trafficking survivor who stood up and gave 3 trainings a day for 6 days. That's how we were able to get thousands of people through. And we recorded every single training. They started going through the exhibit that is art, film, photography, and artifacts. And then that took about 45 minutes, came out, and then they had Annika Huff, who basically you're getting ready to meet through this training here. And she gave the training of basically what first responders can do, how to identify, what to look for. And really the biggest thing is, how do we enter the scene? How do we treat these patients? Because we really have to treat these patients how we would treat our grandmother. And really, at the end of the day, that's how we should be treating everybody. Empathy is a big deal in the fire service. I know that, we have, we're supposed to take this empathetic approach when we go and meet people on the street, but sometimes, and I'm not casting stones in a glass house, but, sometimes around the kitchen table, we talk a lot of smack and it gets a little bit apathetic. And then we're supposed to leave this apathetic environment and go give empathy in the streets, which is really hard to do. So that's just a little reminder. I empathize. It's in the name, right? Empathize. So that's what we aim to do when we're treating these patients.
Wow. Yeah. Now, I do, and I really like it. And I think that the training for me, I took a lot away from it just because I feel like I have been around individuals that potentially were human trafficked, but you weren't necessarily sure, and then what to say and how to approach it. So, but hey, Mark, so we talked a little bit about, the training, and do you want to talk a little bit about how this training's free for all first responders? Like, do you have sponsors, or, who takes care of all this? How is this is that too good to be true?
It's just too good to be true. But thankfully, we have some great sponsors that have partnered with us. We've spent several years coming out to Indianapolis, FDIC, and meeting some of the greatest fire industry providers. Do have a little slide here featuring some of those of IDEX Fire and Safety, Firetex, and Tenkata, along with Honeywell and Darley, have been sponsors this year. And yeah, so we hope to connect with more fire industry providers to make this continued availability to all first responders across the country. But yeah, it's a possibility as we go through this, to see this as kind of a train the trainer opportunity. We're going to walk through this training. We want you to be really familiar with what we are providing, that you can facilitate as a leader, as a chief, training chief. But also, we'd love to come into your neck of the woods too, and that's a discussion we can have. That may involve some additional costs in terms of travel, but sponsors can make that possible as well.
And I know that when Matt, when you talked about just training thousands of people, it's like about having like multiple different departments get together. Is always usually like maybe a county, essentially partnering together. If you did have now,
Totally.
no need, you don't have to, like you just said, you could facilitate this training in your own firehouse through your training officer or training captain or whatever. But if you certainly did want the couple of you guys to actually come in person, you would certainly do that. You guys do that, but yes, it would be a little bit of a cost with travel and things, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, we're actually getting ready to, in February, go out to Sacramento, where we'll be teaching 1,100. That's a 6-day training. So Mark's going to take the first 4 days. I'm going to go in there the 2 middle days and take the last 2 days. So we'll be together for 2 days. He'll do 4. I'll do 4. But yeah, I mean, we're literally traveling across the country. Our whole goal is, again, to never have a fire department say no to this training. That's why we offer it for free. That's why these sponsors that are on this screen right now, IDEX Fire Safety, Firedex, Honeywell, Darley, Tenkata, these are some like incredible sponsors that make that possible, right? So yeah, I mean, it's free. That's the main deal. And today we plan on doing what would be a train the trainer, right? So we can basically get everybody that listens to this. Honestly, my goal for this and this awesome podcast, thanks Chief O'Brien, is, you know, like when we have something where we can reach out and touch, a lot of one state, instantly my goal goes to how do we get the whole state of Ohio trained in the next year? I think that that's a possibility. There's however many chiefs are going to be listening to this, captains, lieutenants, paramedics, firefighters, engineers down the ranks. How many of them are going to be listening to this? What we need is, like we said, empathy, right? And honestly, we need people to maybe just share this. That's all it takes, is just share it, so we can literally make a difference in these people's lives.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, we have the whole audience on the edge of their seat, wanting us to get this podcast going, or get this training going. So let's get her started, Mark.
All right, here we go. This is just the opening teaser video to the 4 other modules.
Would you be able to recognize a human trafficking victim? Do you believe you've had a human trafficking victim in your care while on duty? And if you've had a human trafficking victim in your care, while you would be able to know how to respond, would you be able to know how to respond? So think about those 3 questions as we continue to go on, because I think a lot of us could probably answer that same question themselves. At least I know how I answered them. So.
Okay, so when we see this issue across the country, just to get an idea of the hotbed, this is from the Polaris Project out of Washington, D.C., the #1 tip report for the FBI. These are calls being made to the Human Trafficking National Hotline number. So, Ohio is a pretty concentrated area where we know there's a lot of human trafficking cases, and calls being made recognizing that this is an issue in their area. We know Toledo has been one of the ranked #1 in the country of trafficking victims being trafficked out of, and Cleveland is certainly up there, the top 10. And what's an interesting stat to take note of is of almost a third of the calls being made to the National Human Trafficking Hotline number are from victims. It's a number you can remember and you can pass on. It's 888-3737, 888. That's 888-3737, 888. So, what moves this whole issue is this continual demand. We know that across the country, there's just this appetite where a lot of people, tens of thousands, are willing to pay a lot of money to have a sexual encounter with a child. That's the epidemic ultimately that we're dealing with. And people are willing to go into pretty dark places to find these kind of sexual encounters. So we're going to move on to the next video here, the victim-centered approach.
I was going back to my aunt and uncle's house to sleep for the night, and then the next day I was leaving. I was getting on a Greyhound bus to go to Ohio. She asked me if I wanted to come party, and I remember looking them up and down, and he looked like he was really young. He was smiling, and he was wearing semi-nice clothes, but definitely not what you think of as like typical pimp clothes. She looked like she was younger than me. I thought if she was younger than me and she was safe, then it's probably an okay person. I told them about my Greyhound bus, and they said, well, how are you getting to the Greyhound bus? And I said, I have to take 4 local buses starting at 7 o'clock in the morning to get to this Greyhound station at 1. He said, well, why don't we just go pick up your stuff? You can come here, you can sleep for a couple of hours, and then we'll drive you there. And this sounded really, really nice. And when I woke up, he was gone. He was gone from the house, and she was there. And I started to freak out. He walked in 4 minutes before the Greyhound bus was supposed to leave. And I picked up my stuff and we drove down the road. At 1:30, I was just like, stop, we missed the bus. I was really trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And he's telling me this spiel about, oh, we'll get you nice clothes, we'll feed you, you can stay here, but you need to work with us for just 2 weeks, so we'll give you $500 to leave with. I knew what he was talking about. I knew that he was talking about prostitution. So that night I was trafficked for the first time. It was March 10th, 2014. Once the 2 weeks had ended, I did ask him if I could leave. He said, well, your family hasn't even called about you. They clearly don't really care about you. We care about you. How do you know this friend in Ohio cares about you? And so he manipulated me and to staying longer. When the manipulation stopped working, he got physical. By the time the last 2 months I was there, I was getting beaten every 3 hours or so. He waterboarded me, he pistol whipped me, he played Russian roulette with me, he electrocuted me, he burned me with clothing irons, he beat me with metal poles. He actually lacerated like 2 of my organs that way. So he was very violent, and the fear of dying kept growing as the beatings got worse and worse, to the point where I just thought that was the way I was gonna die.
During my trafficking situation, I wasn't allowed to sleep when I wanted to sleep. I wasn't allowed to eat when I wanted to eat. I was not allowed to shower when I wanted to shower. I was not allowed to wear what I wanted to wear. I wasn't even allowed to go to the bathroom when I needed to go to the bathroom. I have trained police officers and fire departments and hospitals, and I know it's easy to get desensitized to the things that you see on a daily basis. But if you're able to stop and notice a victim of human trafficking when you're at a house or when you're on a stop, you can save a life in a different way. You can save a life by just taking a moment with a human trafficking victim and connecting with them, building rapport, using trauma-informed care and victim-centered care.
If this were your child, if this were your family member, if this were your relative or friend or someone that you cared about, how would you want them to be treated by the system? That's what, to me, a victim-centered approach is. We're going to treat that person with courtesy. We are going to recognize that that individual has likely been through trauma, and it may have been for a very short period of time, or it may have been trauma that's been extended over years and years and years. That person comes with their own baggage, their own fears, their own interactions with the system, their own interactions with the trafficker. So when we are working with that person, we need to be sensitive to all those things.
For years, we've used words that have been harmful. So by starting with the easy things, starting with the small things, like using the proper word. Pimp is not a good thing. A pimp is a sex trafficker. Children don't have sex. Children are raped.
If the victim is under the age of 18, anyone under the age of 18 engaging in sex for money, they have to be considered a victim. And that's federal law and that's state law. We don't have juvenile prostitutes, so we have to get rid of that term. There is no such thing as a juvenile prostitute. They're victims.
When you're trying to build rapport with the victim, refrain from passing judgment. This is in your body, in your face, and your words. When we walk into a room with a buyer, we need to assess everything that's going on. We read their body language. We do this because we don't know if we're going to be beaten, or worse, there are buyers who have killed girls that they have bought. So every time we walk into a room, we have to be aware and we have to read that situation. We're gonna do that when you approach us. Always be honest, never lie. If you have to call the police because they are a minor, then you need to let them know that. We have a distrust in law enforcement, especially. So be ready when a victim hears law enforcement being mentioned, that they'll cringe, get mad at you. Don't make promises that you can't keep. If you're talking about getting this victim into a shelter, you need to have made sure that this shelter already has a bed open for them.
There could be a trafficker in the room who is making sure that this victim is answering all the questions correctly. If that victim answers a question and looks over at that person to see if they answered it correctly, but they can't really answer on their own, then you need to create separation.
In using a victim-centered approach, it starts with things as simple as separating the victim from the trafficker. We have then a better opportunity for them to be honest and tell us more of what's going on.
Here's your opportunity to use your role to say, this person needs emergency medical treatment. We need to get to the hospital. I'm really concerned about this person. I will tell you that most traffickers don't want a dead body in their home. So using that emergency level, that critical need for care, is one possibility to get that victim out of that situation, at least to allow further assessment.
After you get to the hospital, you have to pass this patient off. You have to let the staff know that you have a possible trafficking victim. Metro, or the police department that you've already called, is hopefully already en route to the hospital that you're going to. If not en route, you want to call dispatch and let them know that you have a possible victim of human trafficking, and let them know that the police department needs to respond.
When you are able to use care and compassion, it knocks down all the lies that the trafficker has been telling them for years. That nobody was going to love them, they're worth nothing. These are all things that we're told constantly by our trafficker. So if you're able to use just a simple, I care about you and I want to make sure you're safe, it knocks down every lie that trafficker has. And when they get out of their trafficking situations, they will remember you.
Understanding the 4 T's is part of the training here. You know, what is trafficking, a trafficker, and targets and tactics? We could take a lot of time here, but just want you to have a general understanding that the use of force, fraud, or coercion to make a profit on a person for sex or labor, those key words are really essential. If somebody's going to be convicted of a crime of trafficking, you have to prove those in the court of law. And it's pretty difficult because most often victims won't really snitch on their trafficker. They stay loyal, and so that's a challenging force that we're up against. However, in federal law, in the action of inducing, recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, or obtaining somebody through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of sex or labor trafficking, if they are a minor, you do not have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. That is a federal law. And who was a trafficker, Matt?
Really, anybody can be a trafficker. There's so many times that, the news comes on and they go right out there to Disneyland or Disney World, and they have a whole group of people that are getting busted. I hate to say it, but recently here in Vegas, I guess it was a couple years ago now, when the Super Bowl was in Los Angeles, we had a local firefighter get caught on the strip trying to coerce a girl into going to LA and do some work for him. Well, that was an undercover cop. So he is no longer a firefighter. But, it really can be anybody. Family members are even known to traffic. So any person from any background, we know teachers, people in trusted professions all over the country have been caught doing this.
And really, their targets are vulnerable people. We know that in the state of Colorado, which is very similar to Ohio, there's about 30 minors reported missing every 24 hours. And, typically of the runaways, they will be approached by a trafficker within 24 to 48 hours. That's according to the Innocence Lost Task Force. I work with the FBI in the state of Colorado, and 60% of trafficking victims here in the state of Colorado have been in and out of foster care. So these are kids that don't have a real mom and dad. They long to be loved. They long to be validated, and so traffickers prey upon that vulnerability, and that's where we find human trafficking. And their tactics are force, fraud, or coercion. We're going to move on to the next video here, which is the empathetic approach.
Yeah, well, can I clarify one thing? So the tactics, because during that first video, she talked about, she needed to take a Greyhound bus somewhere. is usually sometimes a tactic would be to kind of say that they can do something that for somebody, that because that seems to be how she got, kind of victimized in this nature. I need to take a Greyhound bus, but it couldn't. Well, hey, they come across like a really nice person that's just trying to do a good deed, but then they realize that they just, in her case, never would have known that she was going to be now trafficked and abused for the next X amount of months or years.
I mean, that's a really good point, and to squeak by that quickly does deserve a little bit more attention. And yeah, I mean, that's it. They they are the father figure. They're the boyfriend. They're the ones that have duped their victim into believing they have their best interest in mind. And so that tactic is very powerful, and moving somebody into a position of being used and abused.
I feel like that tactic would be probably used the most, right? Because then it doesn't cause a scene in the public, and you're just, if are they going to take the bait or not take the bait? But it's not like force where I'm tossing them in the back of a car. It's going to be just, you're trying to sweet talk them, if you will, manipulate them.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get that victim to believe that you love them, and they'll, and you're going to provide for them better than anyone else. You're going to protect them better than anyone else. That works.
But I think it all points right back to the vulnerability, right? Like, what makes someone vulnerable when they're not being provided the essentials of life, right? If they don't have shelter, if they don't have clothing, food, money, right? I mean, we're talking about the very basics of what it takes to get through a normal day for you and I. If they don't have those things, that makes them so vulnerable, and it's very easy for someone to put this front on and appear like they're a knight in shining armor, when really they're a wolf. They're just out to kill, maim, and destroy. So vulnerability is a very big one to identify. And that's what's awesome about IEmpathize, is that they could teach children in schools how to identify potential predators before they even get out of 8th or 9th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you could even say in summary that their tactics are to meet that push factor. What's pushing them out of their home? Is it poverty? Is it loneliness? Is it hunger? And they're going to provide whatever that is that they're lacking.
Childhood should be a time of laughter, growth, learning, and innocence. But all across the United States, for many youth, it is also a time filled with pain, abuse, coercion, and exploitation. Hundreds of thousands of vulnerable children across the nation are at risk to experience exploitation every year. We can't end this problem if we ignore it. Apathy is disregard for the suffering of others. An apathetic society creates fertile ground for exploitation to grow. Sympathy is feeling bad for the suffering of others. Sympathy seems like a better response, but it actually does nothing to repair or change the suffering that is occurring. The one who is suffering is still isolated from the one who feels sympathy. Empathy, however, is the solution to issues of exploitation, because it is a choice to directly respond to suffering. Choosing empathy means choosing to walk in someone else's shoes. Empathy equals ending it.
So empathy is extremely important. It's critical. It's a concept that oftentimes we take for granted, and we don't really think about it too often, but it's really the glue that makes us connect to people. It helps us to build on that human relationship, and without it, you can't gain that trust. Empathy is really taking the perspective, taking the idea, understanding someone, understanding their story to a degree where you can imagine the suffering, to imagine their experience.
Most of my childhood is relatively blacked out. I don't have memories of most of it. I was born to a single-teen mom. She was very neglectful. She was very abusive, mentally and emotionally. It was really common for her to leave me and my brother at home alone for 3 or 4 days before coming home. I also experienced sexual assault from another family member and some physical abuse from boyfriends that my mom had had. When I turned 16, I was kicked out of my mom's home for the very last time. This was the start of a 2-year-long process where I traveled from family members' homes. I spent time in Stockton, California, Sacramento, California, Oceanside, California, a little bit in the Bay Area, 2 times in Vegas, and 1 time in Denver. I was all over the place. And when I left my family's homes, I did couch hop. I stayed in shelters. I remember begging on the street for food money. That was just what my life was at that point in time. When I got to Vegas, I met the wrong people. People saw that I pretty much had a stamp on my forehead that said I was an easy target.
Exploitation is really taking advantage of someone's vulnerabilities. Someone who perhaps may be vulnerable because of their circumstance. Perhaps they are someone who has experienced abuse in their past, someone who is experiencing poverty, or anyone at any time can be a victim of exploitation. What we need to recognize is that exploitation is abuse. It's child abuse, it's abuse of power, it's an egregious crime, it's a human rights violation.
It was the last 2-3 weeks of my stay there. He had forgot to pay the electricity bill. He was using his car to turn on an air conditioning in the room him and the other girl were sitting in. So I was sitting in a separate room. This room was tile floored and there was nothing in it but me and a bookshelf. I was about 105 pounds at that point. I remember looking towards the doorway. I saw the firefighter come in, and he walked past me to get to that back room where they had the air conditioning going. I remember seeing the firefighter's face. He looked concerned. You could tell he didn't know what to make of what was going on with me. I looked down really quickly as I saw him pass by. My trafficker was right behind him, and he shut the door. I don't remember another experience where I felt as hopeful during my trafficking situation as I did with that firefighter. It was the first person who looked concerned, first person that noticed me. That hadn't happened for the 4 months I was on the strip. No one seemed like they cared.
A nightmare. Just think about the nightmare that these people are going through. If you can actually put yourself in their shoes and just mentally put yourself in their shoes and see the darkness that they go through on a daily basis, I mean, that's empathy.
So this work, being empathetic, is very difficult. It can be very challenging because sometimes where people feel like they want to give up, they feel burned out. And this could be true for law enforcement, where law enforcement, they go out and they see the same things over and over again, and it might feel like they're a little numb. They feel hopeless and say, well, and that's can be a very dangerous place where you have different helping professionals feel burned out. And so we need to pay attention to that. We need to recognize that. We need to create space within their own professional days where they are able to decompress, get supervision, consult about it, even take on their own mental health support.
Sometimes we're busy. We run hundreds of calls a week, hundreds of calls a month, and we get tired mentally, physically, and it's really hard to maintain empathy. But as first responders, it's our job and what we signed off to do to at least give 15 seconds of empathy in the beginning of that call so we don't miss something.
When you see these victims, you're going to possibly see this a lot. When we have complex trauma, our brain is not able to produce chronological order of events. So if they're describing what happened to them and it doesn't exactly make sense, that's actually probably a sign of complex trauma, but we often see that as, you must be lying. During my hospitalization, I was talked to by 3 different police officers. The second one had heard my story, and he said, you know, this is bullshit, you're lying to me, I don't want to hear about it, just stop talking. That's the way he responded to me. The last one was a vice unit detective. I said, you know, I'm not going to give you any BS story, I just don't want to tell you the truth, please go away. And that was because of the response of that first police officer who told me, I'm lying, I'm giving a BS story. And I instantly responded to the next person with that response.
So what we know as social workers, we train our social workers to be trauma informed. That when you meet someone and they're misbehaving or they're acting and they're angry and they're, lashing out at you, we know not to take that personally. They're not lashing out at me. They're angry at the circumstance. Slow down. Let's really look at, this is another human being. We need to take it easy and try to understand from their perspective. Instead of asking, what's wrong with you, we train them to say, what happened to you? Tell me what happened to you.
We need to go into every call with an open mind. If we come in and they read our body language, if they read the look on our face, or if they read that we don't even care to be there, then they're not going to communicate with us. If we can treat them with empathy, we can maybe break down that barrier and actually offer true help. And sometimes they'll take it, sometimes they won't. But if you show that you have a heart, they're going to recognize the uniform the next time or the time after that. They're going to recognize the uniform that has come with massive amounts of empathy and provided them help.
How many other kids are there out there that we don't know their stories? We are failing to look or failing to ask the right questions. That's why the importance of being empathetic, not just, oh, that's too bad, or feeling sympathy, but really empathy is to really take that perspective of someone else and be able to say, I am here, I'm gonna support, I don't know what all the answers are, but I'm here, I'm gonna support you, I want to help you, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
So this was a great time to just ask a question, what was helpful in that video. As you heard about the empathetic approach, what are you going to remember?
And then also, Mark, we were speaking a couple days ago, and you stated the fact that when you were in Castle Rock, Colorado, giving a training, speaking to a chief, he made a great point of pointing out the fact that it's easy to get sidetracked in these trainings to where you think that every victim is going to be the same as Annika and speaking with a level mind and speaking, normal. But these are traumatized victims, and they don't know that you're there to help them. And sometimes they don't even care that you're there to help them. And they might treat you like the gum on the bottom of their shoe, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's one of those things that we have to remember, that we have to be patient with these types of victims, because there's a trauma bond, which you'll learn about later. And that trauma bond just keeps that person going back to this trafficker. The trauma bond's a real deal. I've seen it so many times here in Vegas where, I've gone up and tried to speak to victims of human trafficking and tell them about the, programs that we have here in town. And they basically, I've been told, if you're not here to give me money, then you're not here for me, which is just wild to me because I am here for you. And I would love to see you get out of this life and be successful. But just understand as a first responder that when we go and have a conversation with some of these patients, that we may not be welcomed into their environment with open arms.
Well, I'll say that during the class, that was one of the things I took away that kind of resonated with me is when you talked about this trauma bond, that, they get into this life of being human trafficked, not by choice, but by what we talked about earlier, by force or fraud or cohesion. And when this happens, so they're forced into this, or they are, at this vulnerable state, but then when you try to help them, they're like resistant to getting out of the lifestyle, where you would think like they would be trying to run away at the first chance that they would get, but they don't.
Yeah, sometimes it takes 5, 6, 7 chances or interactions with them, because small town, big town, sometimes you run into the same people all the time, but it is one of those things where we have to continue to go in with empathy every single time. Like I said in that video, is we owe 15 seconds of empathy at the beginning of every call. It doesn't matter what type of call it is, especially these calls, right? Because these people or patients will read your body language like no other. So I believe that, eventually they're going to want to get out. It's only a matter of time.
And so is that kind of like similar to like an addiction? Like, because they have to be ready to get out, essentially, or like when you're an addict, you have to be ready to, become sober. And I guess what keeps them going back all the time? Is it because, if they're in a vulnerable state? So a lot of times we talked a little bit about, maybe it's poverty, or maybe it's, hunger, maybe it's all these different things. Are they afraid that all those resources that are being provided to them are going to go away, and they really don't have anybody else to turn to? So although they're a victim, but their pimp is the only individual that they know that is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that is a great point that you make there, Chief. I think that, a lot of, victims get into these programs, and I think Mark could speak to this, but they get into these programs, and when they get out, they don't have family. Like, we're talking about like real trauma and what's their support system when they leave that program that maybe keeps them there for a week or maybe 2 weeks if they're lucky. At a month, I would guess is like max, unless you're really into a program that is like dedicated to getting you to the other side of it. Those cost a lot of money, but I think Mark can speak to this. Mark, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, every victim's different, right? So you've got, Annika, she needed 5 weeks to build rapport with this vice unit before she was willing to give her testimony. I mean, 5 weeks, that's a long time of saying no. And, but then, you've got Kendra Gavi, paramedic in Worcester, Ohio, who identifies a victim 5 days after going through her training. And, other nurses don't believe her. And she was able to build rapport with that victim in a matter of 20 minutes, get her whole story. She'd been trafficked across the border that very day, ended up in Worcester, Ohio. And that very day, she was able to get her back to resources that, nonprofit that got her back to her family. I mean, pretty awesome story, but that's depends on the victim, right? And their circumstances, and in this case, it worked out.
Yep. So we got to play this. Do we move on to the red flags?
So we're on to the next one. We're going to red flags. That's right. That's the next video. You can press play.
Okay.
I escaped my trafficking situation because I had gotten a beating with a metal pole that had given me gangrene infection. He let me walk around with it for 2 weeks. I was required to go to the strip. I was required to make the same amount of money. And for 2 weeks, my body got worse and worse and worse. At first, my body made a covering. It was black and it looked shiny, like freshly put down tar. Then it actually started to smell. And then it started to leak. He got me into the car and he said, "Why should I take you to the hospital instead of the desert?" He dropped me off in a little neighborhood near UMC where I walked 3/4 of a mile to get into the emergency department. I had 29 broken bones, 1 to my skull, 4 on my jaw, 3 on the vertebrae on my neck, 18 on my ribs, and 1 on my left foot big toe. I had lacerations to my liver, my kidney, and my spleen, and I was internally bleeding from my spleen. I was 93 pounds and extremely malnutritioned, and I had the gangrene infection on my butt that was about 3 hours away from my bloodstream.
So, what are the red flags? I mean, how do we know that we're standing in front of a potential victim? First of all, I want to caution that each and every one of these red flags in and of themselves can be indicators of adolescence, mental illness, substance abuse, just the normal rhythms of life and the stressors that people face. It's the big picture. And it's learning to trust your gut that says this isn't right. There's something not right about this.
As first responders, we go on different calls every single day. So we really have to have our suspicions about us, no matter where we go. You almost need to be a detective. We get on scene and we have to unravel the pieces.
When you've been called out as a first responder to a possible residence or a location, and there's been some suggestion of injury, you're going to assess immediately for the types of injuries. There could be swelling, bruising, an obvious broken bone. Look closer. Look at the possible signs of physical abuse, bruises in various stages of healing, meaning that's not the first time, cigarette burns, or injuries that are inconsistent with the story that they're telling you about how they sustained it. It's more common than we even realize that victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, other crimes may very well be victims of human trafficking.
Some other things that you might see is memory loss, confusion, sadness, anxiety, agitation, numbness, and disassociation. Numbness was really big for me. During my entire experience from that first night, I had completely numbed myself. Neurological issues. These victims are hit in the head constantly. They're hit in the face constantly. So just issues with your head are very common. This group, this population, already is required to sleep a very minimal amount of hours a day. If a victim is lucky, they'll get about 5 hours a night. But there was points in time where my trafficker used lack of sleep to control me.
Tattoos. They are very popular. Lots of people have tattoos, and sometimes people go, gee, I wish I hadn't gotten that one. But it is very rare that someone is going to tattoo property of across their chest with their trafficker's name or a barcode. Those are often called branding, and that is a sign that they are the property of someone else. And then inappropriate dress. When you look at that person, if the dress is inappropriate, if it's inappropriate for the season, that could be a red flag. One of the mothers that I had worked with, whose daughter was about 15 or 16 and now she's a survivor, one of the red flags to her mom was her daughter's feet. You know, she would say, hey, let's go for a pedicure, a mom-daughter day. Her feet were so calloused and blistered and sore, and it was from walking the stroll.
So as first responders, we look for patients' identification all the time, and we go through patients' belongings all the time. If you go through a patient's purse or their wallet and you find multiple identifications, multiple hotel cards, condoms, lube, if you find some of these products, then there's a chance that this is a possible trafficking victim.
But the other thing we have to remember is that many of our juveniles will carry ID that shows that they're 23, 24, and unlike our teenagers that sometimes get caught using fake ID and you ask them their birth date and they're like, yeah. No, these victims are schooled. They have it down to a science, who they are, what their birth date is, and how old they are. So they're going to answer your questions as if it's real.
In other cases, the victim may not have any identification, and she may look to the trafficker to get her identification. And guess what? He's probably not going to want to give it to you because he probably has multiple identifications and he doesn't want to rifle through them to find the one that we're dealing with right now.
The victim may have little or few possessions. Imagine walking into a room and you see a possible teenage victim. There's no clothes, there's no accessories, there's nothing. They don't have a lot of possessions. That's kind of unusual. Adolescents tend to collect that stuff. You have to ask yourself why. They may avoid eye contact. Unfortunately, in the trafficking world, there's rules. And one of the biggest rules that these victims have to follow in order to save their own life is don't look at another person. You may be choosing another trafficker over your own. Literally, that eye contact can be the signal. It's called reckless eyeballing, and that's just enough to get a good beating, or maybe even dead, or any other of the threats that have been made to hold them hostage. Claims that they're just visiting, but they have no clue where they are, and it could even be what city they're in.
There could be a trafficker in the room who is making sure that this victim is answering all the questions correctly. There's always eyes or ears on these types of patients.
They may be referring to someone as their boyfriend, and in some ways they consider that person in their heart as being their boyfriend, but it's their trafficker.
You have to ask a lot of questions. Is he the boyfriend? Is he the fiance? Are you really married? Is he actually providing these things that he says or that your victim is telling you that he's going to provide? If the victim tells you that he's providing X, Y, and Z, look around the place. Is X, Y, and Z present?
Is that person fearful, anxious? They're next to their quote-unquote partner, and they appear to be submissive or tense? What about exhibiting unusual fear when the words law enforcement or the cops comes up? And imagine if someone's home is burglarized, they may not love police officers, but they want to call a police officer to come help solve the crime. Victims of human trafficking don't, because that could be a death sentence if someone suspects that they were talking to law enforcement. And then we also have to look at their affect, the way they present in front of you. Are they withdrawn, depressed, distracted? If you look into the eyes of a victim, they're blank, they're black. Because that's kind of their survival mechanism. They just sort of shut down.
As first responders, we have a sixth sense. We know, we have this gut feeling. I encourage you to follow that gut feeling. Instead of walking away and going, I just don't know, take those steps. And if you're wrong, it's okay. Better to be wrong than to leave and have stuff on your mind like I do about patients that I couldn't help.
It's the pieces of the puzzle that we put together. And I am certain that when you start thinking about it, those red flags were there in front of you before, and maybe more than once.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of red flags, and these aren't all of them, obviously. There's a myriad. But, I think Matt has demonstrated this pretty well of learning how to trust your gut. And as he's had multiple encounters in Las Vegas and opportunities to identify some of these red flags and then make a proper assessment.
How come
Matt,
our minds kind of go to somewhere like Las Vegas, but earlier, Mark, you said, you made the comment when we talked about the one slide that had the picture of the United States. It showed like a heat map of everywhere. And really Toledo, Ohio was like a central hub, but you don't think of like Toledo, Ohio when you think of human trafficking. You think of a place like Las Vegas where they're doing the stroll and that you see people up and down and you have all those types of things. So I think it's something to be said even more to be able to pick up on these red flags for individuals like us over in Ohio. I mean, do you realize when we talk about Toledo, Ohio, I am 35 minutes from Toledo. So it is right here. Northwest Ohio is where that's at. So and I want to say it probably is a center hub because of the access to expressways and things of that nature. But even that's why it's even that much more important to pick up on some of these red flags. So I just kind of want to hone in on those a little bit of just those physical ones and maybe the ones that I know she talked about in the video, like that I would have never thought of, memory loss.
Yeah, I mean they're getting beat up, right? It depends, right? Like some of them don't really get beat up. There's a couple of what we call pimps out there. We don't like to use that term because it's glorified everywhere. They're just traffickers. But you have what is called a Romeo and a gorilla, right? So obviously a Romeo is going to take care of them until they stop, doing what they want, and then they can turn into a gorilla. And the gorilla is basically what Annika was experiencing, just getting annihilated. When we were at the training, she spoke 3 times a day for 6 days. And I heard her talk about her circumstance every single time. And every single time you got a little bit different of a story, right? And I mean, her time being trafficked was like she said, she almost died. But of the red flags that I've noticed the most is them not wanting to make eye contact with you, the blank eyes, confusion. That's a huge one, and that memory loss, because there's been times where before I was trained, I had a couple of victims, and I didn't realize that until after I was trained. And when I came out and I went to go write my report, I sat down and I went to write it, and I looked at my partner and I said, I don't even know what to write right now because I don't even know what just happened. So they will run circles around you. And earlier in this training, one of the police officers in there said, you think that this is happening in secret when really it is happening right in front of you. And all that we really have to do is open our eyes a little bit more and just be, suspecting of everything around us. Obviously we've talked about a lot of things, right? Like the vulnerabilities of children that lead to this stuff. I think that that's one of the biggest red flags out there is like, is this person out of place? Obviously there's the bruising and stuff like that, where I have had a female in my care that was covered head to toe in bruises. And again, it was before I was trained. So I just thought, what in the world is going on? So yeah, we'll just go over some of these physical red flags because I got them right here in front of me. Domestic violence or sexual assault. Really, if any woman is getting in a fight at any time in her life, that's a huge red flag to me, even if she's fighting another female, because we have what's called, the top and the bottom. The bottom here is actually the top, and she basically can run all the girls, right? So there may be a power struggle in there, and whoever wins that fight is now the new bottom. Inappropriate dress, avoidance of eye contact, physical abuse, bruises in various stages of healing. We heard about all those. Seeming fearful when they're talking to us. Why are you fearful talking to us? We're not the cops. So That's a huge one too.
Yeah, I do think that is a huge one. Why would you be nervous to talk to the firefighters, or to the
Right.
paramedics? Somebody that's willing to, is there to help you. That is a huge red flag, I think, of why it is. But I would say, like, because until I went to this training, just kind of like you, Matt, I felt like I was in a situation where, we're picking up some people, and I can remember a call being on the line at the truck stop, and I'm like, now that I look back and been through this training, I'm like, yeah, that was definitely somebody that was being human trafficked, and not necessarily at the time really wasn't really trained to know exactly what to do in that situation, but then what are the next steps to even see if because in that case I'm talking about, I feel like she just was on drugs, or you think that they're under the influence of something, but they may not be, because now that's what it's saying, confusion, and they have anxiety. They're just numb, like they're just blank. There's nothing there. They're not on drugs. It's just that's what they are because they've been so abused. And I think that's a huge red flag for us as first responders to be in tune to.
That's exactly what Lynn said earlier in the training, is that like some of these things can come off like everyday life, right? So it is a little bit harder, but I think that if we have our suspicions about us a little bit more than normal, then these kind of come out of the darkness and into the light, right? I will say that, next steps, right? Always, always, always try to create separation. These types of patients, and to get them into the back of that ambulance alone with no one else. We're really good at that as first responders. We're taught in paramedic school, or even EMT basic, if it's a child, try to interview them alone without their parents, because they're not going to be as honest, with them around. So it's the same thing, right? Like, make up some protocol that we need to do a 12 lead, or we need to get, have like do a patient assessment, and find a way to get that patient into the back of the ambulance, because that's where you're going to have the breakthrough. When you're out in the public and there's eyes on them, that's not going to happen. So that is the number one goal. And a lot of the times I've had, it's hard to ask those questions. Hey, are you being trafficked? Are you is someone making profit off of you? They're very uncomfortable questions. So preface that, hey, this is very hard for me to speak about, but I'm very concerned about you, and I do need to ask a direct question. And my experience when they're in the back of the rescue has been phenomenal. In the street, not so good.
Why would we be getting called there in the first place? So like when you talk about in the street, like why would we get called there? Because if they're not calling us most likely, or are they?
I've had both, right? So I've had, it was a conflict between a man and a woman in a parking lot, and someone called on that. And then, the guy took off and the female was still there, and her hand got smashed in a door. So we're there for a smashed hand, basically.
Okay.
And then, once we start to unravel the pieces, we go into detective mode, right? Well, this doesn't make sense. You're from California. You've been here for 2 days. And where are you staying? And you're how old? And it just starts to unravel. But we've also had it to where, the female did call because she actually felt safe enough and she was far enough away from the person to call. So it could be for any reason, right? It could be because someone is sick, or, that's the thing of, like Elin said, again, not to beat a dead horse with a stick, but it could be anything in the rhythm of life. So again, we and how many of these calls do we go on without the police department with us?
Sure. Majority all of them. I mean, smashed hand, right? Or a check safety, or whatever. Is most of the time it's going to be just your engine company, going and checking on them, or maybe just the medic unit.
Yep.
So if the victim is calling, then most likely this might be that time where, okay, they might be ready to exit. Because they have to get this courage about them, Because to that point is
Absolutely.
like, well, they got to get this courage because they might be feeling as if they're super fearful, especially in the cases of where, they're getting abused and they're very scared for their life. But I do want to touch on one thing because that we talked a little bit about, because not everybody in our first responder world really knows this slang terminology. You might hear our kids say something different, or it's the music or whatever, but really what the true meaning is. And when you made the comment that we don't necessarily use the terminology pimp because it's glorified, we call it a human trafficker. Is it because it's glorified in certain social statuses of like rap music or different types of is that why we use the term human trafficking or human trafficker in lieu of that term?
Absolutely. I mean, MTV Pimp My Ride, Pimp
Okay,
My House.
yeah, that makes sense.
It's
Okay.
it's just in society.
Yep.
Culture has like
It doesn't
glorified
sound
this
as
term.
bad, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, they've just made it like that. And
I
then
mean,
Clayton, one more
the fact
thing that I
she
really
can
wanted to touch on is that as first responders or firefighters in particular, or EMS providers, um, we can never assume that the police officers that we've called to come help us have been trained in this.
True.
There's so many police departments across the country who have not been trained in this. I've recently made a save, and I spent 3 hours with this female because I created a rapport with her. As an engineer, I followed the rescue to the hospital. The guys that were in the ambulance were my guys, so they're solid. But once we got to the hospital, we stayed with her until the police department came. In Las Vegas, a street cop has to come and verify that it's a victim of human trafficking. Then they call the vice unit. The vice unit then comes with, luckily here, they come with a patient advocate. The patient advocate saw that what this patient was saying was legit. The vice unit detective didn't want to believe this victim. The patient advocate pushed so much that thank goodness for her or him, I don't know who it was, but thank goodness for them, and for the street cop that came, because his empathy was overflowing, which was phenomenal. I felt good leaving that patient in his care. So I talked to him like maybe 2 months later on Father's Day this year, and I asked him if there was anything else that happened on that call. He said yes. They went back to the house that she told them about. They staked it out, and they were able to save 6 more women out of one house, just because they actually, like, the patient advocate was like pushing and saying, no, we need to believe this patient. So just, and I mean, that's even a vice unit detective who, this is their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, really, we have to advocate for these patients so much. And we can never just assume that a police officer has been trained in how to identify this.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Matt, because even though I know they get some, I think it's talked in our area about the CIT training a lot, that they go through, and it's a lot of, victim things of that nature. But, if it's not specific to certain things, and to really kind of like just go back to the point of just the understanding that the victim that's being human trafficked has to be ready to exit their circumstance, and that exit is only going to happen if they feel safe enough to share with you a little bit of pieces for you to take it to the next. To her point, if you're gonna tell me that I have I'm going to a shelter, the bed already better be, solidified. Because if you lie to them one time of that nature, like, hey, we got a shelter, and then now we're standing in a hospital, or we're going to different shelter houses and they ain't available, then now we just lost that opportunity, maybe for a long time, because as she talked about it, it only takes that first cop that she has this stereotypical type that now I'm not going to share my story with any cop. And we certainly don't want that in the first responder world for us. And those are the things I think that just to pick up on are, it's like, it's hard for us to comprehend sometimes. And also, just, that 15 seconds of empathy at the beginning of every run might just be that trigger. So, okay. So we're going to move on to the partnership and collaboration, partnership and collaboration video.
Last video. Yep.
Okay.
I left the hospital in a wheelchair. I was still extremely sick, and I still wasn't able to even pull my pants up because I had a tunnel that was carved out of my left leg for the infection to get out of my body. I went into a shelter for a little while. At the same time, I'm creating a case with that last detective that came in the room. The one other person during my trafficking situation who showed me care. She had built rapport with me for 5 weeks before I was willing to give my statement. March 2016, he was found guilty in all 15 charges he was looking at, including first-degree kidnapping, assault with use of deadly weapon, resulting in substantial bodily harm, and sex trafficking. He was sentenced in May 2016, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. That month, I felt safe enough to get into this career, to help the girls and boys that come out behind me.
Over the years, we've learned that you can't arrest your way out of this problem. Human trafficking has existed here in Las Vegas for a very long time. It's existed all over the world. We just didn't have a label for it. But we know that we can't arrest our way out because we need literally a village. It takes all those people working together to coordinate a response. We know that we have to have our advocates, our partners with us, because many times these victims aren't going to talk to law enforcement. They're not going to talk to our first responders. And we have to have that ability to ensure that they're safe, that we're going to provide some safety net for them, that we're going to help meet some of their needs. We have to build rapport. So it really is about developing those partnerships, and that's part of the biggest change in the response. And that's why from the very first responders, through law enforcement, through the whole justice system, or just through the system that provides services to these individuals, we have to work together.
We have to create a rapport with the people that we work with, so we have a team. We have an army. It's gonna take an army to beat this. And we don't ever want to miss another victim that's out there. The first part of the team is dispatch. Dispatch is going to be on the phone with the victim. Hopefully they can figure something out before we get en route. The next part of the team is first responders. We're en route, we assess, we figure it out. If we find that we have a potential victim of human trafficking, then what do we need to do? We need to call the police department. Hopefully the police department has a victim advocate that can respond either to the scene or to the hospital with them. We need to get that patient out of there if possible, and then we're en route to the hospital. At the hospital, we need to make sure that we let the staff there know, the nurses, the physicians, and through that, we can get some outside help from nonprofits that can come in and assist this patient. And then hopefully, as a team, combined, we can take great care of this patient.
So this is truly a collaborative effort. It's one that's going to take each and every one of us taking that step forward, passing it to the next person who takes it the next step, and we create a seamless model so victims don't fall into the black holes in between. In a situation where you're just kind of concerned, the environment doesn't feel right, you can certainly call the national hotline and 24/7 trained advocates that can answer your questions. If you say, what do you think? They can answer your questions. That number is a 24-hour hotline, and it comes back to us in real time. So if you're making that report, or if a victim is saying, help, I need somebody, they immediately contact us. Or if it's a 911 type of situation, a victim calls and says, you know, he's gonna come back, I'm scared, what do I do? It'll go right to dispatch before it even comes to us. If the victim is not willing to communicate with law enforcement, if it's something where that victim is willing and able to talk, but doesn't want law enforcement but needs help, it will bypass law enforcement and go to our community partners who provide services so that law enforcement doesn't get that information. It's the victim's right. It's the victim's right to get help, and to get help in a way that they feel safe and comfortable.
So if you're on a call and a victim doesn't want to receive services and all you can give them is the National Human Trafficking Hotline that they can call later, you didn't fail. You've created that seed. If you use care and compassion, they will remember you, and whatever you had said to them is going to be a seed that plants until they are able to get out. It's going to break down those lies that trafficker had said to them and make them feel like somebody does love them out here. And when they're ready, they'll come out.
So this is my why. This is why I do the work that I do, and this is why I believe in the collaboration, because these are our children, our nieces, our nephews. Nobody is exempt. This is our city, and it's about taking it back.
Here in Vegas, we're not perfect. We're still working on it. There's still steps to be taken. We're still working with our law enforcement partners. We're still working with the hospitals, private providers. We're still learning that there's gaps that need to be filled. I encourage you to find the gaps in your department, in your city. And I encourage you to reach out and build a team and activate a team and get it going today.
So we've just got a couple slides left here. We wrap up the training with this acronym, PAVE, Matt talked about earlier. PAVE, a path to freedom. It's posture, attitude, vocabulary, empathy. And once again, Kendra Goffey, the paramedic that had that awesome rescue story out of Worcester, Ohio, she said, this acronym absolutely 100% helped her get that girl to safety. And
hey, Mark, what was the population of Worcester, Ohio?
27,000. I mean, who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought? 27,000, not that big, but that's what I mean. Like, this is just could be anywhere, and it could be the travel through. Like when I felt like it was even a smaller town of the 10,000, and but being at a truck stop. So you just never know where it's going to be. But I do like the acronym of PAVE: posture, attitude, vocabulary, empathy, and just keeping that on the forefront of it.
Yes, so we'll skip these last two slides, and then we have a post survey that obviously we won't do here, but we'll, if you're leading this, that post survey just allows us to see how the needle moved. Oftentimes, we'll start a training and ask the question, how many of you as a first responder know you've had a human trafficking victim in your care during your time as a first responder? No hands go up. And we'll wrap up this training and ask the same question, how many of you now know during your time as a first responder you've had a human trafficking victim in your care? And hands go up. So it's important to know that that needle moved. So then we'll have a Q&A at the end, and hopefully guide those directions as much as possible. But that last post survey does give an opportunity for first responders to also communicate with us, feedback, comments, anything like that that we can also share back with you as the chief or the training chief or the leader of this training facilitating.
Yeah. Now for the audience, when this is posted in the notes of the podcast, you will be able to find the IEmpathize website. So you can click and access that website. It can get you straight there if you go through it that way, or you can just type in the IEmpathize. I believe it's IEmpathize.org, right? So
IEmpathize.org.
Yeah, IEmpathize.org, and go to that website. Like I said, it's very easy to manage through and be able to find the training. As you work through the training, there's going to be different, questions and things that you work through, but I can see exactly how it would be easy to facilitate that training as a training officer in your own department to at least start bringing up some questions and some, having the Q&As throughout the entire training to talk about it. Because I think and during your class, I didn't raise my hand at the beginning, but I certainly did raise my hand at the end. And I feel like that is probably the same for a lot of people until they're just, what you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Any last takeaways?
Chief O'Brien, what you've done in giving us the opportunity to present this to lots of leaders is awesome. And we need more of you out there, more advocates of this training, and we need more fire industry provider sponsors that can make this possible. And if you want to connect with us and ask further questions, please, you can email me, mark@IEmpathize.org. And let's have that conversation. And certainly we can coach you through any of the training if you want to facilitate this in your area. We'll give you the resources you need. We have a facilitator's guide and everything that would make that possible.
And I could put your contact information in those notes as well, Mark, so it can just make it easy for any
100%.
audience member to be able to access this to get directly to you. So how about you, Matt? Any takeaways?
First, I just, again, thank you so much. This is just huge for us. The challenge is still out there. The gauntlet of, getting all of Ohio trained by the end of this year. That is the goal. And Mark and I are more than on board to help that, happen in any way. How cool would it be for Ohio to be the first state literally trained across the country and has every fire department across their whole state trained? I mean, that's how you make a difference, and that's how you show empathy. That's how you put your boots on and you walk along with them, and until we find, we're never going to stop this. We know that. That's not, sure, that would be the greatest end game of all time, but that's the goal, and is to get all of Ohio trained. And Chief, I can't thank you enough for having us and hosting us, and thanks again.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah, and if I can say just one last thing, if you are hosting this training, I mean, typically it's 1 hour, and in any space we'll take 55 minutes, have this thing wrapped up in a pretty meaningful time. So I know this podcast led to a lot more good conversation, and I just wanted to give you an idea that an hour is a reasonable time to host this.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. And I guess a takeaway for me to the group or to all the listeners is that it starts with empathy. And I think sometimes we forget about that as in our career, as you talk about all the trauma that maybe all of you as first responders are exposed to on a regular basis, we become calloused. And sometimes we become callous where these patients and victims and everybody that we come in contact become a number or just another run, or I'm just tired and all these other things. So I just challenge all of you out there to take a look in the mirror, hit the reset button and say, hey, you know what? Again, the people that are calling and pressing 911, it is the worst time for them. It might be your 10th time that day, but it is the worst time for them at that very minute and that very moment. And just a little bit of empathy can go a long way with whatever patient that you're going to be encountering. So I challenge you to go on that and keep on it. And I really appreciate Mark and Matt for you taking all the time. And a little bit of what the audience won't hear or see is some of those technical difficulties that we worked through all today. So, but it was truly a pleasure to host you on the Triple P, and thanks again.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.